Hi, folks. I'm Dan McDermott. Welcome to Google Plus Week, an unofficial look at the world's coolest social network. What a week it's been. We learned all kinds of stuff about Amazon's new product line, and we learned that they're definitely going after Apple and Google as well, using, well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, we want to talk about some Google Plus news and some Google news. Joining me at the beginning here as I look for him. I've got the wrong mouse. Oops. There we go. Let's get Alan Furstenberg up here. Also, we'll be monitoring your comments as we go from the comment stream from all over the place, including YouTube Live and a bunch of posts on Google+. So first, Alan, tell me, I guess the first thing, Hovercards. Tell me about Hovercards, and then let's talk about this new Wirecast thing that's coming out that's exciting.
It's actually been a pretty quiet week on Google Plus, all told. We had a couple of very small, subtle changes. I think the most interesting one of which was that Hovercards, which is what pops up on the screen when you literally hover your mouse over a person's name, shows their picture, shows a little bit about them, where they work, or so forth. It used to be that it would show where they work and where they went to school. And now one of the bits of information that's going to be displayed as part of that hover card is what a person can set as their tagline. So instead of having to say, provide just information about where you work, which may not really say anything useful about you in a social network, you can now say whatever you want. The tagline's been something that people could set since day one. It's always been there, but it never was used in a hover card. Now this helps identify you. So people can put nicknames there, they can put blurbs about them there. It's just another really good way for you to make sure that you're finding the person that you think you're talking to. So it's kind of showing that Google Plus is beginning to mature in some of these little edge cases that we've been talking about for over a year now. And it's finally beginning to come into its own.
Okay, that's it's all about the personalization of
right. I mean, it's the sort of thing where it seems like it's a little thing. Who cares? But I think it's really showing that they're really finally paying attention to some of these details that just make Google Plus a better place.
And it makes where it's really going to come in handy. It's kind of like a quick elevator pitch, especially if somebody adds me to their circle and I hover over it. Normally, I want to go in, see if they've posted, see if they filled out some information on their profile. But if they've put a tagline there, that's going to help me to understand, maybe this is somebody I ought to follow.
Yeah, it makes it, it's very helpful. It's good for you because you can tell folks who you are, and it's good for folks, to discover new friends, which is how we all met here on Google+. So I guess another thing, Bruce, I know you are a broadcaster, and you've been, for years, you do the Hangout show, Tech and Coffee, and you do your Morning Manna audio podcast, right? And then I don't know if you've used Wirecast, but I use Wirecast for the produced version of this program. And for folks who don't know what that is, I will let me show you here. This is actually what it looks like, and you're going to see it's getting smaller. But it's a program that will allows you to switch and do different shots, that sort of thing. But I was hoping Jeff Zayas was going to be able to join us. But one thing that they're going to be doing is they're going to have a virtual camera. And you've done this with other programs. You want to explain what that is, Bruce?
Right. And, there have been other devices, like Webcam Max, kind of low-end things, some free that people were using, Minicam and so forth. But the first big guy out of the gate with a good VVD or virtual video device driver was actually XSplit Broadcaster. I'm using XSplit now, so I can do some camera switches like you're watching now. But then somebody else who was working on it, and everybody was hoping that maybe they'd be out first, was another company that I've been with for a long time, and that's VidBlaster. VidBlaster is developed by Mike Versteeg in the Netherlands. It's a great program. VidBlaster Pro, the version I use, runs about the same price as the Wirecast. It's like $495. So XSplit Broadcaster came up with one, then VidBlaster came up with one. Wirecast has been promising one for some time, and it looks like they're about ready to release something. And I think that's going to be great for Hangouts to be able to do camera switching with Wirecast. Right now, I really like XSplit Broadcaster. It doesn't use as much CPU resources as VidBlaster, but I like VidBlaster for some other things. Like, for instance, can you imagine doing a slow motion replay in Google Plus Week? I could do it. I could go back and replay what Alan said a few
How it would
seconds
be
ago.
like a 7-hour show then, I think.
Right. But
Craig, go ahead,
yeah.
Bruce. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, so I think these are great things, and I'm really interested. You know, one of the things that Wirecast has is this desktop presenter. Nobody else really has anything equivalent to that. So if they add virtual video driver to Wirecast, it's going to make it nice.
Yeah, TriCaster has a similar program, but I don't think it does audio. Although I'm not using the audio feature because
And if you're aware of it, TriCaster announced last week a brand new device, $5,000. Give you 4 camera inputs, and that's a lot less than their, $11,000-$15,000 early price point. So if somebody's looking for a good hardware device, the new TriCaster might be great.
yeah, Wirecast is a lot less expensive, but it's a very time-consuming, problematic experience to get it functioning. I'm sure you had the same thing with your software. You tried different cameras, different sound cards, and different video cards, that sort of thing. You really don't know the perfect combination. It's a constant state of change, but then at the same time, you have complete control. You can upgrade different things, whereas and
Right.
it's a lot cheaper. It's 500 or 1,000 depending on what version you get. But
Yeah.
if
The biggest
it's
issue
humming,
is with the video cards. A lot of people are using Blackmagic intensity cards, and you're going to have SDI, or is it going to be composite? Then you can have these things called balins. You can do a Cat 5 run for 100, 200 feet and have a balun on either end and take composite from a nice camera like a Canon Vixia, a prosumer camera, and have a balun on your end and take it back into the Blackmagic intensity card. But the main thing, if you're going to use XSplit Broadcaster, VidBlaster, or Wirecast, is you just really got to have a PC with a minimum i7, or like I'm using tonight, a brand new PC, a new AMD second generation quad-core Trinity processor, 3.4 gigahertz, and what's made all the difference in my video streaming.
now what do they? How does that compare with an i5 or an i7?
Well, it compares with an i7. The new second generation AMD Trinity processor really is on par with the i7. Plus, this new PC's got a dedicated video card that's taking off some of the video processing. So I'm real happy with it.
For folks watching, if you want to comment on that, I'm curious what you think. If you have an AMD or experience with the i7 or the AMD he's talking about, I'd be curious to see what you. We're monitoring the comments on YouTube and on Google Plus. We'll get some opinions on that. Let me go to Craig. Craig, we learned that Google Fiber, with 2 days left, has signed up 21,000 folks. We've learned that in Kansas City, and then we've learned that there was an article about how taxpayers are helping, but that's common when you're trying to lure a business in. You give them a break initially or whatever.
Well, whoa. There's give them a break, and there's subsidize their electric bill.
Well, that's giving them a break. That's very common.
I read that article, and my take on it is the folks in Kansas City. I'm talking about the citizens and the government there and all. I mean, they pulled off a heck of a coup, in my opinion, and getting Google to come there. I mean, they competed, they won the competition. Now they're doing everything they can to make the thing succeed, and I think that a lot of other cities should take notice. And the last thing they should be doing is whining and complaining about whether or not taxpayer dollars were used to help make this thing happen. I mean, if the city is smart, they're going to do whatever they can to make sure everybody gets high-speed internet in that footprint, and they're going to tell the world about it, and they're going to use it to bring all kinds of new commerce and new productivity and so forth to that town. And if they give Google some free electricity here and there, I say they're dumb like a fox.
Yeah.
I'll give you an analogy. I used to teach high school at Randolph-Macon Academy, and they were founded. That's in Front Royal, Virginia. I think it's the only co-ed boarding school with Air Force Junior ROTC, and they made a deal with the town when they came in 1892, I think, that or at whatever point they got water, whenever they invented water. and they said the town, to lure them there or to keep them there, whatever, they said they would get free water forever. And
Yep.
now it's 2012, and they still get free water for their main building. That's
Yep.
but they also have a couple hundred employees, and the kids come and spend money in town. You see them shopping everywhere, and I think I would happily give them some electricity for Google
So
Fiber to
you
come
make
to my
it sound
town.
like it's running a machine off of a plug in the corner of City Hall or something. We're talking the Google data center in Kansas City is being paid for by everybody. It's being paid for by the city.
Correct.
So we're not talking one or two machines. We're talking a data center.
We're talking a significant amount of money, six figures a year probably.
I think what they need to do is, and they've probably done this, is they need to look at the benefits of something like this, potentially putting Kansas City on the map, a place where nobody would dream of moving. And now there's people all over the country that are Googling, the weather in Kansas City to see if they can stand it or not. I mean, this has literally put them on the map. And
I don't think we'd be talking about Kansas City, frankly, with all due respect to all of the wonderful attractions there, but for Google Fiber.
I am actually considering purchasing some real estate there and opening up a something there, and I would have never dreamed of that before. I mean, I think this is huge, and I think other cities should wake up and take notice. And there are certain things that the government can help with. I mean, I'm not a big government person, but if this country is going to be competitive, we better get high-speed, reliable internet to as many people as fast as possible. This is something that is not going to wait. We can't just sit around and wait and say there will be better ways of doing it in the future and so on and so forth.
I'm still trying to figure out if this is the same small government Craig ship. I'm really confused about the two of you, Craig.
We
You've
have a
got this split
comment.
personality here.
We have a comment from
I
Kevin
think there
Bryan.
are things that can be done. Real quick, Dan, I think that there are things that can be done to allow private enterprise to do this, but things are structured right now in such a way that the government has already made sweetheart deals with cable companies and so on and so forth. And so they have to now make sweetheart deals with people like Google if they're going to undo the things that they've already done. They're already in bed with these people.
But these are, I will agree. But some of these sweetheart deals aren't on the same level as what some of the deals that Google got. I mean, part of what Google got was also preferred access on the rights of way. To me, that seems fine. That seems perfectly
I don't
reasonable.
know what area you're comparing to, but I know that Adelphia, now it's Comcast, but when Adelphia came in here into Frederick County, they got all kinds of concessions
Well, like
in order
what?
to hook people up to cable because
Like
they
what?
didn't want to do it because there's a lot of rural areas. They didn't want to run the cable and all that. They got all kinds of concessions, and they finally ended up doing it. This is common. It's a big investment to do this infrastructure.
I understand and I agree that it's a big investment to do this infrastructure. And I don't have a problem with some of that to a degree. But you'll also see things like when the cable companies came in, they had to make significant investments in terms of the cable plant, in terms of buying a building to house that sort of stuff. When the phone companies moved in, they had significant real estate investments. Why is it that Google gets to bypass some of this and take up space in City Hall rent-free?
Well,
I want to go to the comment.
I
want
don't
to start
think
going
we
to the
know all the
comments.
facts on that. I don't think they're getting everything for free. I think they're getting some
They
concessions.
are. It's in the contract. I mean,
I wish my
I don't know
town
if
would
they're
give
getting
them stuff
everything
for free, Alan.
A
I
lot
gotta
of
tell you.
companies give tax incentives and all kinds of things to get companies to come in that are going to provide jobs. I don't
And
see
if
this
they
as
had
any
an
different, any
empty
bigger or
building-
smaller.
If they had an empty building sitting somewhere or a couple of floors in a building empty and they gave them to Google, here, move in, I mean, what's the big deal?
I'll
the
agree
fact
with you.
is They're
I
getting
agree
it
on
done.
things like that. But the question is, what is it costing the taxpayers?
That's
and,
right.
And as you point out justifiably, what is the benefit?
That's right. That's what needs to be considered, those two things. And we don't know enough facts to make a determination on those two things. But like Dan said, I can't wait for them to make a deal with our community here. It'll never happen because they're so damn backward here.
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
And I wouldn't even say that, except for I know that they're so backward they're not even watching this show.
I want to.
Hey, Craig.
I want to cover a couple of comments here. We got a comment from Kevin Bryan. In general, I don't agree with corporate welfare, but 1 gig will cost them 6 figures and get them millions.
There you go.
Not a bad return. And then another.
Well, we don't know yet. The jury's out on what economic impact this is going to have on Kansas City. But I think if they execute well and they get a lot of people in this and they keep pushing it, I think that it'll be a net gain for the footprint.
What's the local tax? What's the local tax on cable? Do they get like a sales tax of some kind? If 21,000 people have signed up for it.
I'm sure they do now, but like I say, here in Frederick County, there were a lot of concessions when they initially wired everything. Now it's changed hands, and Philadelphia sold out to Comcast and all that. So I don't know what arrangements are in place now.
What if it's $1 a month per user that goes to the locality? That's 21 grand a month, right? That the locality gets in taxes just from that, not including the people working for the company and the taxes and what they spend.
There's an
and
interesting
the new companies
question.
coming in.
The people working. No. Let's go to that one, Dan. The people working for the company. How many employees has Google brought to the area? It's a good question. I don't know the answer, but it's a good question.
Yeah, I don't think they're releasing a lot of this information. I think it would be interesting to have all these facts, but the bottom line is,
but I think one of the things
they're getting something all of us want, right? They're getting it and we're not. That's what we should be talking about. That should be the subject matter of this whole debate, is how do the rest of us get it?
We're going to do a couple comments and move on, but I just wanted to check with Craig. Is there any truth to the rumors we're hearing that Google is going to purchase Area Guides?
They're negotiating to purchase Hangout10.com, but you didn't hear it from me.
Okay, so that's just
didn't hear it from me.
And Dan,
that's just a rumor.
More importantly, there is a run. There are a number of bets going on about how many times you're going to show your Nexus 7 this evening.
I see. Yeah, I think what's the current running time? It's currently plugged in the bedroom out and back, so at least 7 times I think is the. And then Kevin Bryan wants to move to.
He's having to charge it because he was using it on vibrate quite often today.
See, you're in a mood. What do we got? We got Kevin Bryan wants to. He said I wanted to move to Kansas City. Kansas City, here he comes. For 1 gig.
Is there a song like that? I think there's a song, isn't there?
Yeah, it's it.
Oh, yeah, but we can't play it because it's copyrighted.
Kevin's comment was that he wanted to move to Kansas City for the internet, but then he realized it was Kansas City and he forgot about it.
Yeah, but at least he considered it.
My goodness. Okay, keep the comments coming. We're checking them
They
out.
got great barbecue and fantastic steaks in Kansas City. So.
And coming up, we've got this comment from George, which I think is actually insightful. Not surprising that it's from George, just surprising for the tone of this evening's conversation. And he says, Alan, you can't draw any conclusions yet. The thing hasn't even started. I assume that started properly. And that's a good point. There's still 2 more days until we see how people have finished signing up. We get to see what happens when we actually see connections and what people's reactions are going to be. We get to see what it's going to look like when it actually goes live. So George makes a good point there.
That's right. The thing could totally collapse. People could say it doesn't work, it's no good. I mean, all kinds of things can happen. But the fact is, they're getting it and we're not. And that I think should be the discussion maybe for another time.
Okay, let me get Michael Banks. You're an Android developer, and Motorola just introduced, I guess, the new Razors or Droids. I don't know. I have a Motorola Photon, which has the worst camera ever put in a phone. But tell me, I don't know how closely you follow this, Michael, but what do you think? They're going to. They announced that they're going to bring Jelly Bean to every Motorola phone, except some that they physically can't because they're older technology, and those guys will get a $100 gift certificate.
Dan, right?
What?
Which means yours.
Mine is not that old, Mr. Furstenberg.
Doesn't matter. It means yours.
But if they
that's
said,
what it means.
see, you're bitter. You're a bitter
I'm not bitter because I have a Samsung already running Jelly Bean. In fact, it's been running Jelly Bean since the day I got it.
And your white back Nexus 7.
And
Yeah, I hate him. Yeah, we all hate Alan. Okay, Michael. So
He probably has a vanity URL too.
I do not have a vanity URL.
no. I think we're gonna get. We'll both know when the other one gets those because I think we're supposed to get them at the same time. But okay, Michael, tell me about the. What do you think of the Motorola phones? Are they a contender or is it meh? I mean, Google owns them. It's the first Google owned. It's the first time Eric Schmidt was there at the new product announced, right? Because since they've actually finalized that purchase. So, what are your thoughts on this?
It's definitely good for the market, and it's nice to see Jelly Bean put on more devices, and it's probably because of Google and their relationship with Motorola. But I don't think it's you might see a Nexus from Motorola soon, but I think it's an ecosystem that continues to go. There will always be another Android phone.
I don't think we're going to see a Nexus from Motorola ever. And if Google's smart, they won't do it.
I think it has, just because, to be fair with all the carriers, it's been with Samsung for a while. I think it's supposed to be the tree line of Nexus phones coming up, so that's definitely going to be more than one manufacturer.
Right, but go ahead, Anthony.
I think that Motorola strongly deserves to get a Nexus device because of their history with Android. I mean, look back to the original Droid that they released, which was a major change in pace for Android. So, if only because of the original Droid, Motorola is, in my opinion, at least once well deserving of getting the Nexus phone.
I would say the biggest reason why you won't see a Nexus phone from Motorola is because Google doesn't want to make it look like they're playing favorites too much with Motorola. They need the other phone manufacturers, and they want to keep holding out the Nexus bone to all of them. And I think the day they start giving Nexus to Motorola is the day that all of the other phone manufacturers are going to contact the local antitrust division.
Why don't they just pull out all the stops and let everybody make one? Let every single manufacturer make a Nexus phone simultaneously.
Because there's too much interaction between Google and the company that is the Nexus developer for that particular phone.
Let's say you've got 3 or 4 major manufacturers. You just work with all of them simultaneously. Let them all release a phone. I mean, how much more fair can you be than that?
Because that's a lot of work on Google's part.
They just don't have the resources.
Can start working for once.
What's the differentiating factor, Alan, between a Nexus phone and a non-Nexus phone? Is it simply that the Nexus is just raw Android? Without bloatware?
It's really hard to say now. Yes, the Nexus is raw Android, and traditionally it meant that the Nexus upgrades were coming from Google as opposed to your carrier. But the Nexus, the Galaxy Nexus that works on Verizon, the updates come through Verizon, and it's not a pure Nexus experience because you've got Verizon drivers, and it's been delayed for who knows how. The Jelly Bean version of it's been delayed forever. So.
Well, see, that, in my opinion, is a mistake. That's a mistake. If it's going to be a Nexus, it should be a pure Google experience, period.
But the phone companies don't want that.
Well,
They want their bloatware. That's why you can buy the phone directly, but I don't think it'll work with... Will it work with Sprint, the Nexus phone?
Well, I'll tell you what Google should do then. If Verizon won't play ball, Google should tell Verizon, okay, Verizon, you cannot sell any more Android phones.
Well, the problem, though, is that Google wants the phone on Verizon, and I would...
Yeah, but if Google flexes its muscle, Verizon will cave. They've got no choice. They have to sell the phone now. There's no way they could pull back and not sell the phones.
Obviously, I don't know what the position of Google is at this moment, because they don't talk about this type of things. But I would strongly opinionate that Google put the Nexus device on Verizon and allowed certain concessions to Verizon so that the next time they can put the Nexus device on Google, and they've already created demand and not give concessions the next time.
Yeah, I mean, considering that at the Motorola announcement, Verizon was there. They said Verizon, the word Verizon, I don't remember how many times. It was clear, Droid is a trademark of Verizon, not of Motorola or Google. A lot of people associate Android
Can
with
Google
Droid.
stop? If Google wanted to, could Google tell Verizon you can't use Android anymore?
No,
No.
Android is open source. They can't tell Amazon they can't use Android anymore.
But the
They
only
can't
thing they
tell
could do is
thousands
they
of
could
tiny
tell them they
manufacturers.
couldn't do a Nexus phone anymore.
They'll tell them they can't do a Nexus phone, but the Nexus phones aren't Verizon phones. I mean, honestly, Verizon has Google over a barrel on this one, I think. Verizon's in the driver's seat. We got a whole bunch of comments. Let me start getting to some of them. Oops. From Kevin, a Motorola phone is a nice second phone after you get a Samsung 3. And I need to switch my graphics again. My apologies there. Kevin also later opined, I think they'll let all the manufacturers make a Nexus phone. It's going to take a 10 of choice to fight the next iPhone, and I think that's a good point. I mean, that's really where they.
That's a very good point, because I'm sitting here on the fence. I'm thinking about possibly buying an iPhone 5, and if Android and Google, whoever the heck they are, now that you say it's open source, I don't even know who it is. If whatever this entity is, if they don't get their act together, if they don't stop putting out fragmented phones that have bloatware that are every which way, that you have no clue what you're buying and you have no clue what's coming out next week, it's just a cluster, you know what. If they don't straighten their act out, I will never consider one of those phones.
It's not going to happen. It's not the.
I'll never consider one. I don't want those headaches.
It's just like a Microsoft computer. You can't not tell someone not.
I don't. That's why I don't have a Microsoft computer.
But isn't this fair to say, Michael, that the gap that used to exist between earlier iPhones and Android 2 point whatever, and the gap now between Jelly Bean and iPhone is much narrower?
But the problem is, Dan,
So I don't
most
think that
people
it's
are not
not-
educated enough to know what to buy to narrow that gap.
Well,
I mean,
most
you've got
people
all
who
these
bought a
marginal
phone in
phones.
August bought an Android specific Samsung S3. That beat the iPhone
Right,
last
you-
month.
you can make-
it beat them
you can make-
because people were sitting on the fence waiting for the new iPhone. They won't beat them, after the new iPhone comes out. But
I think related to that,
it's not in its infancy anymore. Android is Jelly Bean has become a much more mature product, I think. Go ahead, Alan.
I think related to that, we had this comment from Margie. I don't care about having a Nexus. I care about having an Android phone that has longer battery life and allows you to uninstall bloatware and have a clear front-facing camera and great audio. And I think that's it, really, is people want features that honestly compete with the iPhone. They don't really care specifically whose name is on it. They don't specifically care that it says Nexus on it or not. They want a phone. They want it to work well.
And they want it to be
do all of those
consistent.
things, it has to be
They
a
want it
Nexus.
to be consistent. Okay, if my friend buys one and I buy one, I want to have a consistent experience. I don't want it to be every which way all over the field.
It depends on the person. Some people want to stand out and make theirs different. They don't want to be the same.
When I say consistent, I mean performing well. And they don't have to look exactly the same or whatever, but I mean performing and functioning. That's what people want. They don't want to have to mess around with everything and uninstall programs and reinstall and troubleshoot. And
Only a Nexus fits that category.
but somebody just said that some of the Nexus phones have bloatware from Verizon on them.
Well, that goes back to that's not a true Nexus.
That's
It
not
has
the
to-
Nexus that you
It
buy
says
from the Play
Nexus.
Store.
It has the name Nexus, but the only phones that are certified by Google are those that had vanilla Android, without the carrier
But-
things on there.
So
That's how
that's
it should
what
be.
No, there's
Google
no
should
such.
do.
But on some level, there is really no such thing as vanilla Android because the actual carrier drivers have to come from somewhere. In order for it to run on Verizon's network, it needed Verizon's drivers.
That's more hardware, isn't it?
You still need software drivers to talk to it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, if Google could figure out a way to come up with the best possible phone and say, this is what we're going to certify as the best experience and call that Nexus, and then allow various manufacturers that want to play ball and various carriers that want to play ball to sell that. And then if Google would advertise the you-know-what out of that phone as this is the best mobile phone experience. They don't even have to say Android. They can just say this is the best mobile phone that you can buy, period. That's all they need to do. Game over. They can take on the iPhone.
Alan, you want to bust
Why don't
through a
they
bunch
do
of these
it?
comments real quick?
Yeah, I'm doing them, Dan. I'm doing them.
Go ahead.
We just got this one in from Kevin, and I wanted to emphasize it because it ties into what Craig just said. Once Jelly Bean works its way through the Android ecosystem, the performance issues will be largely over, and people will stop caring about Nexus so much. Kevin, there's one huge, huge problem with that. Do you know just what share of the Android market Jelly Bean has right now? 1%. Maybe it's 1.5%.
Is it that high? It was 0.6 because I remember
I
doing
know,
a post
they
when I
just-
said I am the 0.6% because
Right, they just released new numbers on Wednesday, I believe, that it made it up to 1.5%
so they've more than doubled their market share.
in a month.
Yeah.
And at this rate, we're going to actually, get any decent share of the market at what point? Someone do the math. But do you know what still has 60% of the Android market share? 60% of the Android market share. And this is who is accessing Google Play. 60% of it is still being done by Gingerbread. Android 2.3. Okay, so it's going to be a
does Gingerbread have
long
issues?
time.
It sucks.
It has issues.
I mean, it's great unless you've tried anything other than that. It sucks. I have it on my Motorola Photon, which is here.
You really want to show that on the screen, Dan?
Yeah, it's my Motorola Photon. It's got the difference is dramatic. This is kind of a naughty background picture from a girlfriend of mine. But anyway, that's what it looks like. And once you've had Jelly Bean, my God, it's like I don't know, Bruce. You've got do you have a Nexus 7, Bruce?
No, I have an iPhone.
Who has a Nexus 7 and an iPhone? Or Michael, do you have any iOS stuff?
I had iOS stuff. I got rid of it.
Real quick, we got to move, but your comparison of Jelly Bean versus iOS on mobile devices, what do you think?
Again, it goes in preference. There's no drastic, crutch anymore.
It's Ford or Chevy. It's not Cadillac versus Yugo, right?
That's the long way of saying that the iOS are still better.
See.
Ford and Chevy. I like that analogy.
Okay. Okay, Alan.
Want to try to quickly hit a couple more comments
Please.
From our friend Abracadabra. The specs of the Nexus isn't all that. So I don't think Verizon would care too much if they wouldn't be allowed to sell it. And I think there's a point there.
It's a year old. It's almost a year old. Of course, specs aren't there.
Yeah, but it's. What did we just say?
That's why
been out there for
Google
ages.
should. That's why Google should spec out the next Nexus phone as being the best they can do. I mean, in other words, here's a phone. This is all that, and the specs
Why
and
are we
everything.
still talking about the Nexus? Because that's the latest software.
That's what a Nexus phone is. It's the best that's available at that time, in theory.
In theory.
In theory.
Yeah.
Why can't they do it in reality? Is there a problem? They can't buy the components, or what is the problem? Why can't they do the best?
The problem is, Google comes up with the new Android, okay, and they of course make it available for the Nexus devices first, and they push it out, and they say here it is, here's Jelly Bean, and it's on the Nexus 7, and it's on the Google Nexus phone that Alan got at I/O. Then it goes to the phone manufacturers, and this is where you have a point, Craig, because the Apple has the iPhone. There's not iPhone 17 different versions of it at any given time. They manufacture one at a time. So they make their iOS for that device, but there's many Android phones. So after Google releases Android to the phone companies, they come up with the different versions for each of their phones or the new phones or whatever. Then it goes for testing to the carrier. and Sprint puts their bloatware on it, and AT&T puts their bloatware on it, and now that's why my Motorola Photon still is running Gingerbread 2 point whatever, when that's 2 versions ago. That's why 60% of the phones out there. Also, the carriers, frankly, don't have a big. They're not chomping at the bit to upgrade my phone because they gain nothing in doing so. I'm not buying it again. They're not raising my rates. They have no financial incentive to upgrade this phone.
See, I just don't understand why Google doesn't get up off of some of the dime that they have and put together a crack team to come up with the best possible phone at any given time that they can come up with, hardware-wise and software, and then say, okay, manufacturer A, B, C, do you want to sell this phone? We're going to be advertising
No,
this.
Craig,
We're going to roll out.
They did that. They
We're
did
going to
that.
roll out. Well,
It's
let
your
me finish. Let me finish.
No, Craig,
We're going to
no, let
roll
me
out
answer
$1
you.
billion advertising campaign over the next 12 months advertising this phone. $1 billion we're going to spend advertising it. Would you guys like to sell it?
They tried it.
That's what Google should do. If they want to stand up and take on the iPhone, they got to play with the big boys now. They got to
Except
get
for
up
the
off
fact-
of some of that cash.
Except for the fact that they're not, they hadn't, until they bought Motorola, they weren't in the hardware business. So what they did was they go to all the manufacturers and say, okay, show us your best phone, and the best one of it is going to be the next Nexus phone.
That's fine. They can do it that way.
That's what they've been doing.
But they got to make sure that it really is the best. See, I think one of the problems that they have and that these manufacturers have is in some cases, Apple has gone out and bought up the best components for like 2 or 3 years in advance and bought up all the supplies. Maybe they can't get the right materials and the right components to really make a phone that can actually compete with the iPhone.
I don't think that a Nexus phone has ever been released that was less powerful than the current iPhone.
Yeah, but it's not just the power of the CPU. It's everything. It's the whole thing. It's everything put together. It's all the components. And if there's one particular component group that they can't get the best of because it's all been bought up by Apple, and then they've got to buy some second-tier product, that's a problem.
All right, let's
So-
let's
You're listening
move.
to the sound of a Volvo bust exhaust. I think we've exhausted this topic. Let's move on.
Okay, a regrettable pun from our friend in Lynchburg, Virginia.
But Bruce, I want one last thing I got to say. We do know that Google is listening, and we do know that Dan McDermott is listening, because I said many, many months ago that we need to be able to include comments in the live stream, in the live show. And now you notice tonight he's been doing that. So we do
Indeed.
know that people are listening.
Go ahead, Alan. You've got one last comment, and then let's roll.
This one actually goes to Craig. I don't know. We had a ton more comments. This is the last one, though, from Kevin again. Why can't Google come up with an ever-loving, high-quality Nexus phone? 5-megapixel camera? That's a joke.
And by the
Okay,
way, the
moving on.
See, I
Dan.
don't care
Yeah.
if it's a 5-megapixel camera. If it has a nice big sensor in it and it takes great pictures, 5 megapixels is fine. We want quality. We want the best we can possibly buy, and we want Google to deliver it. End of story.
Okay, so we all agree, and Android's way better than iOS. So there, I said it. Okay. Speaking of iPhones, apparently Craig's phone is built with slave labor from students in China. Craig, defend your. You're an Apple fanboy. Defend your. Did you see this article? This crazy
why
story
would-
in the China or whatever
So
daily.
what do we want to do now? We want to take the children's jobs away from them now? I mean, you know,
They're making like 80 cents an hour.
what-
If
what
you
are we
figure
waiting for?
they're making,
What are we going to do to
they
the
were
children
busing them
next?
in. No,
What
apparently
are we
they.
going to do to the children next? Kick them into the gutter? I mean, come on. Now we're going to take their jobs away?
All right, couple quick notes. First of all, and I'm gonna put the comment back up, but I've got all the comments are coming in live from all over the place. It's in about a dozen different places right now. We're getting comments from a lot of them from YouTube Live, and
And they're all going into the live stream?
But if you're watching this, yeah, they're all
Cool.
collected. That's what this thing
What
is.
we need.
I'll show you. I've got Gerwin's awesome comment tracker, and then I've got this on a separate laptop in front of me, and then I'm capturing this center thing here, the blue part where the comments are, and then I'm putting them on in Wirecast. So I'm broadcasting this live on Justin TV, and if you go to my profile on Google Plus, danmcdermott.net, you'll see the post to get to the Justin
in the
stream.
In the produced version, they'll be there also.
Yeah, if you look at it in your Hangout there, you'll see it. Like I'll
Yeah,
put
I
it up
see
there right
I
now.
clicked
It's right
on it.
Yeah, it's
And
right
it
next
looks
to
like
your.
if they're watching it full screen, they'll even be able to read the comments.
Yeah, that's what it looks like there.
That's what we need. We need that built into Google Hangouts.
Yeah, it'd be neat. Okay, so anyway, it's a great story, and the links to all these stories are in the comments or in the
What
description
stories
of the
are
video.
great? Wait a minute now. What stories are great? The slave labor story?
We
Yeah.
agree. Let's move on.
Very
Samsung
classic.
is being investigated for the same thing.
First of all, it's non-news. It's not news. We know that manufacturers over in China do all kinds of things. They do whatever they can to cut corners so that
How's
they
that not
can make
news?
as much. What?
It's news.
No, it's not news.
It was in a
News.
newspaper. By definition, it's news. It's new.
No.
It's in a
News
newspaper.
is something that is
news is
new
something
to
that's
you.
new, as opposed to being the same story
That's
every
right.
week.
News is something that is new to you, that you're informing somebody of something that is newsworthy, right? How can this possibly new? It's old news, I'll grant you that.
No, the new part of the news in this case is the fact that this is a bunch of college students who said they were being forced to leave their classes under threat of being failed out of their classes if they didn't show up at a manufacturing plant to build iPhone 5s.
And we don't
That's the
think this
news.
has been
Let's
done
move on.
before. We don't think things like this have been done before.
That's the news. Let's move on.
All right,
Yeah.
we're gonna go on, and Craig, you can continue your apology tour for Apple later.
This is why. Where is it?
So, what about that new Amazon product?
Yeah, I want to go to Amazon. Do you have some knife or something you want to pull out, Craig?
Well, this Kershaw here was made in the USA. Okay. This is why a lot of the products that I review are made in the United States of America.
Where's that?
Where's the United States of America?
That's where
Yeah.
that's where they ship the products that the slaves make for Craig for his phone.
Okay.
Okay, so Amazon has turned up the heat. I saw a great review of this. Amazon, or a great summary from Nick Bilton, I think. He said Amazon is putting out top quality tablets. They are going to subsidize them, and they're not afraid to, and they're going after Apple, and that's what's going on. So let's talk about this. In summary, the new Kindle Fire, which looks a lot like a Nexus 7, and when the Nexus 7 came out, it was compared with the Kindle Fire, and the specs of the Nexus 7 were vastly superior.
I'm sorry. It looks a lot like a Nexus 7. Do you mean like visually?
I mean, it is the exact same size. It's black case, and until you turn it on, it looks the same. I mean, if you
No,
saw
it
them,
doesn't. It doesn't look anything like it.
I mean, I've seen them side by side, and they look similar until you turn them on when they're
I mean,
sitting
the
in
pictures
Walmart.
I've seen of them, the Kindle Fire has this huge plastic bezel, as opposed to the edge-to-edge glass of the Nexus 7.
I mean,
Visually, I think there's no doubt the Nexus 7 looks like a sleeker unit. The Kindle Fire looks like this kludge from 2 years ago.
But your average Walmart shopper, dollar store shopper, iPhone user is going to, look at them turned off in the Walmart and say, these.
No, your average iPhone user is going to like the Nexus 7. Your average Walmart shopper may prefer the Kindle Fire. I'm not disputing that point.
Well,
yeah,
but visually they look very
different.
Now,
Where are they? They said they were
let me-
going to have them in Office Depot, Staples, Best Buy. I can't get my hands on a Nexus 7.
A Nexus,
They
I bought mine
online
at
and people
Staples,
put them
and
down at retail.
they're sold in Walmart, but they go quick. You just go; they're not promoted heavily. But let me do the quick thing, and then you guys can debate this. The new Kindle Fire is the original Kindle Fire, which was $200, is now $160, and then the now they have,
And it's not the original Kindle Fire. It's an updated version of the Kindle Fire.
correct. They also have some new Kindles with amazing I mean, this is no joke. I was picking on Apple, but obviously Apple produces, great quality products. I'm not denying that. I can't stand Apple. This new Kindle line is very impressive, and the prices are just absurdly low, but they're subsidized. They're all ad supported, right, Alan? And so there's the new HD model. One is $200, and there's a new about a 9-inch tablet, the original 7-inch, which is $200, the old price point for the regular Kindle, but it's HD. meaning it's got an improved display, it's got stereo sound, it's got allegedly nice sounding stereo two speakers, which is wild. They've got a diversity antenna system where I'm a singer, and so I know, like, for wireless microphones, like I've got a Shure Beta 87, it's got two big antennas on the receiver side, and it's a dramatically better quality signal because it can choose which to use in constant, like your old cell phone would choose which tower was stronger and use that one. So this one has two antennas, multi-in, multi-out, MIMO technology or whatever. So that way, whichever one is stronger, it uses. So if your hand's on one side, it's going to use the other one likely. And then if you switch hands, it'll switch it over. It's got Dolby sound, and $200 for the 7-inch and $300 for the 9-inch model. Really, I'm rounding these prices, and it's an 8.9-inch. And then also there is a, they said, what if the sky's the limit? The most popular price, the best-selling ones, are at the $400 or $500 price point, $499. And so if we went to that price point, what could we do? And they said, well, we would add 4G LTE, and they're going to have a data plan which is $50 a year, and you get 250 megabytes a month, which is not a lot. I use about 3 or 4 times that. If you are using it fairly often, every few days at a restaurant or something, and you're not watching Netflix, you're checking your email or Facebook, Google Plus, Twitter, that sort of thing, web browsing, you're going to use about a gig a month, I would say, roughly, anywhere from 750 megabytes to a little over a gig. But I'm sure they'll have. I suspect they'll have higher price tiered plans. But they wanted to put a shot that $50 a year thing to get the oohs and ahs, which they did get. So, in a nutshell, that's what it is. So let me start.
Say again, Michael.
Yeah, it's a one-time payment for a year.
That's a say again, Michael. It's
It says you get 250 megabytes a month for 12 months with the one-time payment of $50.
correct.
So
I said $50 a month. It's $50 a year.
It's $50. I'm sorry, it's $50 a year, and that
Dan
plan
said
is 250 megabytes, which is amazing. So anyway, that's kind of what they announced, and I think it's a clear shot at Apple because, in my opinion, the only 3 companies that have an ability to sell a subsidized tablet, and by subsidized I mean they're selling it at cost or a little bit cheaper, would be Google, which has the Play Store, Amazon, which has Amazon's whole ecosystem of content that they're really expanding on. They've got some neat features. Parental controls. You can say for every 30 minutes that your kid plays a game, he has to read for an hour, and there's a separate background on the Kindle Fire, so that even from across the room you can make sure your kid's logged in correctly and not scamming. Just brilliant stuff. The coupling of the audiobooks that they own. What is it? What's the audiobook store they own? Audible. They own Audible. So what they're going to do is, it wasn't clarified, but I think they're going to have some special deals where you can get the audio and the print version for the Kindle version of a book. And so if you're driving, if Bruce is on a road trip and he's driving, listening to an audiobook, and then when he gets home, he curls up in bed or on the couch or whatever to read the thing on the Kindle, it remembers where he left off on the audio version and picks up there on the print version. So just some really amazing, innovative stuff at ridiculously low prices. So let's start from the right to left, and Michael, go ahead. What do you think? And then Alan.
It's not for me. It might be for the Amazon lover, but again, it's dual core. My Nexus 7 is quad core, so it does have a better display and maybe better sound, but it's not for me.
Yeah, but Michael, they're claiming that their dual-core processor will beat out the Targus. That's their claim.
Remains to be seen.
Yeah, a lot of things remain to be seen. Anthony, did you want to say something? It looked like you had a thought in there.
Well, I just wanted to say how I think that the 250 megabytes for 12 months for $50 a year is a great thing, because if it was me and I had the option to pick it up on my tablet, I'd sign up for it and I'd use Wi-Fi 90 to 98% of the time. And then if I'm driving in the car, I can just hook up into the 3G and still have my connection. And then when I get to the grocery store, which has free Wi-Fi, I can just connect back into the Wi-Fi, and it's to me it's a good buffer for those like 30 minutes or a day or what have you, where you're traveling between Wi-Fi spots and you can still stay connected. I have 250 megabytes free for 2 years through my Chromebook, and I stay on Wi-Fi, and when I'm traveling, I for a very short time jump on the 250 megabytes, which I basically never ever use up in a month, and that's a great feature.
Yeah, and it's interesting how a lot of people are split on this. I mean, we had this comment from Kevin. I seem to be going to Kevin a lot this evening, I know. I'm sure 250 meg per month is the best they could do from the carriers, but I sneeze and use more than 250 meg on my computer. That won't cut it. I think if you're sneezing in some very high resolution, aren't you there? I know that when on my phone, I'm using more than 250 meg a month on my phone, and I mostly stick to Wi-Fi as well. I think it pretty much depends on exactly what content you're streaming.
If they at least warn you before they hit you with big overage charges, then it's no big issue. In other words, if you can set it up so that when you hit that 250, it'll warn you and say, hey, you got to buy some more bandwidth, or we're going to slam you.
If it's anything like the Chromebook, it warns you about how much percentage you've already used, and once you hit like 90%, it gives you a bigger warning, and then once you hit 0%, it just cuts you off straight up. You don't go into the next plan until you.
Can I go back to my earlier point? I'm a geek. I've been in Walmarts and Best Buys and every office supply place. I have yet to see a Nexus in the wild. I fly in airports. I spend a week on the road every month. I've not seen a Nexus in the wild. I've not seen a Nexus in any office supply store, Walmart.
Maybe they can't make enough of them, Bruce.
No, wait a minute. When Amazon comes out with these new devices, they will be everywhere. And that's where Google's missing the boat. When you walk into any Best Buy, you walk into any office supply store, you see the Nook full spread, you see the Amazon full spread. Another thing that I don't like, this is the Kindle Touch. Now I like the looks of some of the new readers that they've come out with, but they've taken Audible and speakers and audio out of the new read-only thing. I like the fact that I can read a book here, but I can also listen to my Audible books on this one. No speakers, no new mic jack on the Kindle. But I guarantee you, if you don't start seeing these Nexuses out in retail for people to pick up and compare, these Kindles are going to sell well.
I think the story will be told if they can come out, if Amazon can deliver on this new tablet the way you're talking about. In other words, if they can get the manufacturing ramped up and they can get enough of them out.
That's the only way they know how to deliver. That's the way they're
Well, if they can do that, then it's really showing a weakness on Google's part, and maybe they're not making those deals with the suppliers, the part suppliers and so forth, like Apple is doing and like apparently Amazon is doing.
I don't think it's the part suppliers that's the problem. It's the delivery.
They made the old Kindle Fire with this company that made the Playbook, the RIM, the disaster. I wonder if that same company is going to be making these new Fires as well.
Okay, so Bruce, you love your Kindle, right? You had an original Kindle Fire. Then we're going to go to comments in a second. You had your original Kindle Fire, and you ended up returning it to get a regular Kindle.
Right.
And you're desperate for a Nexus 7. I got to tell you that they're in Staples and Walmart. I'm not sure what other stores, GameStop. But I would call and check. But they're not promoted. You're right. They're not heavily promoted.
You don't ever. I asked.
Google has a promotion problem. Who'd have thunk it?
I mean, there should be a gigantic display. They should be. Why don't they pay people? Everyone I've shown this to, Alan. I'm an evangelist, as you are. Not in the sense that Bruce is, but for the Nexus 7. And I'll go up to people randomly and I'll say, look at. I'll see them with an Android phone. And I'll say, hey, check this out. and I'll show them my Nexus 7, and they freak out. They're like, "Oh my God!" I said, "Yeah, it's $250."
So let me get this straight. You walk up to random people and you whip out your 7-incher and you say, "Check this out."
Usually hot girls.
We have this
'Cause it's a
comment from
conversation,
Kevin Bryan.
starter.
We have this comment from Kevin again. Amazon understands retail for the masses better than any other tech company. Nexus 7 will be swamped by the Kindle Fire, even though the Nexus 7 is much better.
Exactly.
Well,
The thing
much
you have to
better,
mind
maybe
too-
too strong, right? We don't know. I mean, the Kindle Fire is no joke. These new specs are fantastic. It is.
But here's the thing, Dan.
It's
most
ice cream
people-
sandwich with bloatware on top. With
Yeah,
packaged.
but also some nice new features, which ice cream sandwich does not have yet. But
Correct.
and which Jelly Bean doesn't have yet either.
It's a
people-
it's a bridge
people
off
don't-
or a fork, but it's a nice fork.
It's a very nice fork in some ways. The biggest issue, though, is
It's a
people.
spork.
Bruce is punchy tonight.
People when they're out looking for a tablet, they're not going to compare the specs and say, oh, hey, this is a Turga 3 versus, this is a quad core versus a dual core. They're not going to look at that. They're going to hold up the two tablets and they're going to look at the graphics and they're going to look at which does what better. They're going to look at where they can get the movies that they want. They're going to look at the features that mean something to them, not some random number, and they're going to pick one. And Google has to convince people that they should be picking the Nexus 7. And I'll be honest, I don't know how Google can do that.
Okay, a couple other things, Alan. I'm going to get your thoughts on this and the rest of the room here. All these are ad supported, and there was some back and forth about this because they conspicuously did not say there's an ad supported cheaper Kindle. They took the cheapest Kindle and it's now $69, which is a throwaway price. I mean, people are going to be using this thing to scrape the ice off their windshield. Who cares? It's $69. That's lunch in New York. And then
Yeah, the ad supporting. Let's talk about the ad supporting quickly. The big issue with ad supporting there is where are the ads showing up? My understanding is they just show up on the lock screen.
I think it's a fair deal. I mean, to get one for $200, it's really a
Right.
$300 or $400 tablet.
Dan, just so you know, for clarification purposes, this is a spork right here.
Thanks.
Okay,
And they
that's-
do show up on the bottom of the Kindle. They do show up on the lock screen, but you do see that little one at the bottom of this Kindle Touch.
Okay.
Now, Bruce, I remember I was watching Twit, and Leo said that he liked it, that he had the ad-supported version, and that he actually liked the thing, and that he thought that it was a good thing, and that the ads were relevant. In the same way that sometimes, I've said this many times, I'll do a Google search, and I'll get crap results, but the sponsored links next to the search are actually more relevant, and I'll go there. So I like those ads, those text ads next to
Leo
Google
always
search.
says he likes something like this. Give him 6 months and see if he's still using it.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
he'll be onto his new toy because he always has new toys. Good for him. But go ahead, Anthony.
At least with the previous Kindles, you could buy your way out of the ad-supported device. Like if you, I'll
You
just
cannot
throw out
this time.
numbers, but
Apparently, they said to CNET that we'll see if they change their tune based on feedback. But there will not be a buyout option. That there will be this, but I don't think it's like as Craig or Bruce said. I think it's just an ad on the initial screen, and who cares? I mean, they just like Google, they know what stuff you look
People
at,
are
and it
gonna
might be
buy
relevant.
these if they're into the Amazon ecosystem.
Correct.
Simple as that. If they're using Amazon all the time and they're an Amazon Prime member and they're there all the time, they're going to be seeing these ads. It's going to be Christmas time. They're just going to click the button and just buy it. And
you were
this
joking
is-
before we started that the best and the worst thing, the best for your fun and gadgetry, and the worst thing for your wallet was becoming an Amazon Prime member because it really
oh my
works.
gosh,
You
biggest
just
mistake
one
ever.
click,
Well,
Biggest
but here's
mistake
love
ever.
it.
also
It's
here's also
cost
the thing.
me $2 or $3 grand a month every month.
When we're talking books or when we're talking movies, everyone is associated or TV shows. Everyone's associated Amazon as one of the best providers of these things. When you're talking music, I think iTunes still is still the king of that corner, at least perception-wise.
And a quick
Google is nowhere in there. And if you look at Google Play for those things, Google's got nothing. It's a poultry store. Google has, I mean, that's really the thing that is totally not compelling about the Nexus 7. And that's that, yeah, it's tied to the Google Play Store, but so what? Because there's nothing in the Google Play
I don't
Store.
agree with that
So
at all. There's
when do you,
every functionality I've tried to that I've thought of or wanted, I've been able to find in the Play Store, and also it's not even a year old.
Dan, you can get the West Wing from Google Play?
No, the West Wing is on Amazon, but it's
Oh.
Not on Netflix.
well,
anybody
that's not
look,
a
any
fair
cord
example 'cause
cutters,
it's exclusive
every
for the-
cord cutter has gotten
some
as
months.
you know, you get Amazon Prime, and you get Netflix. That's what everybody. That's what all the cool kids have Amazon Prime and Netflix, and they follow George Cozy, and they watch Tech Webcast. I'm supposed to do a shout out for Brad. He had Scoble on, and before that, somebody else awesome. I forget, but it's a really good one.
And
So
Amazon
check out.
signed up two things. They signed up two more. They signed out Epics and Touchstone Films also this last week.
Awesome.
You know what? And you keep on going back to Netflix and the streaming capabilities of Amazon Prime, and I think that's what you really need to focus on. It's not really the apps, and it's not really like the music or the books or the magazines that you can get in these individual stores. Google needs to create a streaming video store, and I bet that's in the pipeline. In some point, I don't know if it's in 6 months or a
They
year
have a
or 2
streaming
years,
video
but
store.
do they?
Yeah, Google
make a
Play.
free streaming service?
What was
Basically,
that?
you're saying they need you pay per month or per
Right.
year, and
Oh,
you
a
get a
subscription,
bulk,
sir.
a
Okay.
quality
Yeah.
of and
Right.
I'm sure that the companies that are not that typically what they'll do is they'll do an exclusive for a while with one of them and get a big chunk of change, and then they'll switch and then they'll make it non-exclusive. That's what you're seeing now. That the Epix catalog, which was exclusive to just Netflix, is now on both. And they're like, oh, it's a big blow to Netflix. It's not. I mean, it's a $70 a year, $80, $90 a year thing. Who cares? I mean, you get both, and you've got, you're gonna have to loosen your belt buckle because all you're gonna do is, I mean, you're not gonna run out of stuff to watch. And it's not the latest episodes. You can get Hulu Plus too. That's cheap. It's all cheap. It's all three together are like 20%. All three together are like per year a monthly cable bill.
So do we all agree?
We all agree. And then Google stock is at almost hit a record today. It had not been above $700. They're getting ready to split. I think in July they said that they were going to split, but Google stock since I think 07 had not been above $700, and it hit that today. Very interesting. The day after Amazon's announcement, with their major, quote unquote Nexus 7 killer, or whatever you want to call it. Google stock hits I got to get this epic face from Alan on with me. They hit an almost hit they approached an all-time high. As Facebook, of course, is tattering in a
Actually,
NASDAQ
Facebook is
graveyard.
pulled
They're back
back.
up, right? They're back
Yeah,
up.
I mean, they didn't hit my number. I was sitting there just waiting, hovering on the button, and they didn't hit 17.
And then also we're hearing that Alan, there may be a 3G Nexus 7. Now, I've debated this. I did a post on this, and I don't think it's... I prefer... If you have an Android phone, the best app I've seen from someone who commented on one of my posts is a thing called Foxfi, Foxfi, one word. It's a Google Play free app, and it turns your phone into a free mobile Wi-Fi hotspot. And if you have Sprint, you have unlimited data. Now, I use it. It's you won't see it in the Play Store on Sprint or AT&T, but you will see it on a Verizon phone, because Verizon, when they bought a certain chunk of spectrum, they agreed to basically sort of have like to not block any capabilities, and they ended up paying a $1.7 million fine for doing so, and so it is in the Play Store on a Verizon phone. But if you go to the Amazon App Store, you can get it there. Foxfi, Foxfi,
But
and it will.
but Verizon's they're all capped, right? Their data plans are capped, aren't they?
Yeah, but you can still use. I mean, I don't know. I think they are. I think Sprint's the only unlimited data.
And it's still is Sprint still unlimited?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but not their mobile hotspot. Their mobile. I have their mobile hotspot as well, and I never approach 2 gigs, so I don't feel like I'm stealing anything.
Mine's unlimited.
Because I'm always way under. But that's how I power my Nexus 7. If I'm sitting in an Applebee's or something, I'll do that.
You'll tether it. You're saying.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the 3G, and I've got 2 thoughts on this. The first is, if they're going to gear up for it and they're going to announce it in time for the holiday season, they better do so soon. But the chances are they're about to get swamped by the iPhone, so I'm not
Why
really
would
sure
they
we're going to see
announce
much.
a 3G phone now that 4G is?
And that's my second point, is at the Motorola event.
And tablet, we're talking tablet.
Right. At the Motorola event, they spent most of the time talking about just how wonderful LTE is. They were falling over themselves praising how important speed was, how great 4G was, how wonderful Verizon is. All of these things they went over and over themselves, and now they're going to come back and say, "Oh yeah, and we got this 3G stuff for our flagship tablet."
Well, also, Alan, that I don't think that's confirmed, right? I mean, I think that's a story.
It's a story. It's wishful thinking.
It's a story. It could be. It's a story. Either it's untrue, or they're just aiming for the lowest possible price point, or they want to get it out there quicker and not have to deal with carriers, which they would with a 4G LTE. With a 3G, I think that maybe they just want a super cheap plan. But I think Amazon, what they did has dramatically altered the landscape, and everyone's going to stop. This is going to make everyone stop and think before they do anything. And I think Apple's event, I think they're going to do the iPhone 5. They're not going to talk about, even if they were going to talk about an iPad mini, I think they're going to push it back because they're going to have to reevaluate their price point, everything. It's probably already being made, so they can't change the specs, but they're going to have to really think about the plan offering and any last minute things they can do, because Amazon is no joke. And remember, the Kindle Fire, which wasn't that great, is the all-time best-selling. The original one was the all-time best-selling product on
Android
Amazon.
device.
So
Well, it's also one of the best-selling Android devices too.
we use the term Android loosely, but indeed
Well,
it is an Android.
They don't anyway.
Anyways. So final thoughts.
I think the 3G Nexus 7 is a lot of people with a lot of wishful thinking. I don't know. We'll
Especially
see,
when
but
the new Samsung Note 2 is going to be 4G, 5.5-inch screen, and a processor that, by benchmarks, blows everything else existing and on the horizon out of the water. I mean, that's the direction that I'm headed, unless the iPhone really does something really, really special.
I don't
Okay.
think the iPhone's going to do anything that special.
Well, we've seen some leaked stuff, Craig, and I think I shared a post with you about that, and
Yep.
it wasn't. I don't know what, but we don't know. I mean, like the Kindle Fire, if you had just seen them held together, you wouldn't have captured all of the incredible software innovations and service innovations that. And I would encourage anyone to watch that video
The
of Jeff
problem
Bezos.
now is we're finally getting to the point where, like the iPhone, for example, my iPhone, the camera's about as good as you're going to get with a fixed lens with no zoom. They can't really get it that much better right now without major improvements in the network. The problem is the network. It's not the phone anymore. The problem is when we're out and about, the data connections are terrible. And in most places where you go, there are a few places where you'll get a strong signal and you'll get great throughput, and you can maybe upload a 2-minute video, HD video to YouTube if you're daggone lucky. But that's the exception to the rule. Until we get a network that works, this is all a moot point. We can have great processors, we can have great cameras, we can have editing software in there to edit the video and all that, but if we can't get it up on the internet, what good is it?
We got to move, Craig. But on that note, I think the next, I think a hint of what's to come is this. Is it pronounced MIMO or MIMO, whatever, MIMO, the multi-in, multi-out. The new Kindle Fires have 2 antennas for Wi-Fi. and it's 2.6 gig antennas, gigahertz, and so it uses the best of each. But we're seeing some innovations with video where you can get a box. It's thousands of dollars, and it's very expensive for the service. But to do video, so you're walking around a convention, interviewing people, and you're shooting this video live streaming, where they actually take Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon, and you have 3 different things, and it's combining them to get you like a nice quality signal.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see multiple things, and I think you're going to see stuff like what Google's doing in Kansas City, and there are rumors that they're looking at many other cities to expand to. You're going to see.
But how long do we have to wait?
In places like that, you're going to see a different wireless technology with multiple antennas where it combines them and gives you a really fast thing. And I don't know how long we have to wait, but I think the demand pushes the technology, and so you're going to see this. It's going to get better, and it's great. I mean, I remember, Craig. We're both old enough to remember when you couldn't really even play any kind of video from a DVD or anything on a computer. It was choppy, and now look where we've come.
That's right.
And so phones are going to get the same way because the demand is there. Okay, so let me go to the next thing about Amazon is really interesting. I want to do this briefly because we've talked about this before, but there was a really interesting story about their latest push against brick and mortar retail. And I remember when they first, when they had the big California bill and they were fighting it, and about a year ago I interviewed the main 2 lobbyists on either side representing the brick and mortar stores and Amazon, and it looks like now they're really pushing for same-day delivery, which instead of fighting sales taxes, it used to be the rule is if you have a physical presence in a state, you have to collect sales tax. If you don't, you don't. So what Amazon, they were fighting, they didn't want to have sales tax in a lot of states, and so the distribution centers were in these. That's the reason they're in Washington State, because it's not that populated instead of California, and so they wanted to put their distribution centers in less populated states and often under sub companies, so they could try to scam the sales tax thing. I say scam, not derogatory, but that's what it was. So then now they've stopped fighting that. And what they're going to do is they're going to straight up put distribution centers all over the place, and they're going to move toward like this locker system or whatever, or make special deals with FedEx, I would suspect, where you'll be able to order something, and let's say you order before noon, you'll have it at home at 5 p.m., or maybe you could pick it up at a locker at a 7-Eleven on the way home from work a few hours later, which will be huge. Because the one advantage retail has, in addition to be able to look physically, touch something, or to try clothing on to see if it fits, the big advantage that brick and mortar retail have is that you can get it right away. So if Amazon, I'm gonna go to Alan, if Amazon can do that, then I think that's a dramatic change. So we can get your thoughts on this. Let me go to Alan with a comment here.
This was a somewhat humorous comment that we've somehow turned into the Amazon This Week show, sponsored by the Nexus 7.
Well, I bought mine, and Alan got his for free after paying like $1,000
Bought mine too.
to go to I/O, and Michael bought his.
But I mean, we've talked about Amazon's plans to essentially take over the big box stores and turn them into distribution centers before, and I think Amazon's approach here is it's killer. It really is. And that's starting to roll out more and more now as the states are able to impose their income tax, their sales tax, directly on products from Amazon. So I believe California is the first state to actually roll this out, and that went into effect this week. So Amazon has been forced to step up their game.
I agree, and it's also. Amazon is rumored to be thinking about some stores, and some people say, "Oh, that's stupid. They're online." But if you think about it, and I've posted this multiple times because I think it's fascinating, because we're witnessing Amazon is it's a dramatic change in American retail and the way people buy things, and there's all sorts of websites, but eBay, etc. But Amazon is the poster child for this. And I think we are, just like when we went from an agrarian to an industrial society to a service society, I think we are in the middle of a dramatic shift in American economic retail, and we're witnessing it. We don't necessarily realize it right now, but history books will judge. But the stores, someone commented on this issue. They said the biggest thing they have is intelligence. They know what sells in Tucson. They know what sells in Salt Lake City. They know what sells in Seattle. And they could set up a store with the high moving, in the way that Costco doesn't have 17 kinds of ketchup. They have one kind of ketchup, and it's a pallet, and they can just bring a pallet in, and they're not paying like Walmart a clerk to stock 50 different kinds. So they save that way. Amazon could do the same thing because they have all this smart intelligence about what sells in certain areas.
Yeah, I bought a new PC this week. I'm using it now. It's an HP quad-core, really nice machine. I bought it from Amazon. They have a great return policy. I'm an Amazon Prime member, so I have the free 2-day shipping. It came a day early. Totally surprised me. And so I think they're on the right track.
You got it next day?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Okay, so the next thing, the FBI. There was some guy. I'm going to give a very brief version, and Alan can correct me, or Michael can. But basically, the FBI gave a subpoena to Google for a user's password, and they couldn't get. It was one of these squiggly to unlock the phone, and they couldn't figure out how to unlock the phone. So they had a warrant, and Google refused. And it was interesting because with a warrant, you can go into somebody's house or look at their phone, that sort of thing. But the argument here, among other things, one of the key arguments is once you have someone's password, that could theoretically be their password for multiple things. And so it goes beyond the required narrow scope of the original search warrant. And so they refused. Now, apparently, they've since worked it out. I'm guessing that they gave the phone to Google, and Google, I'm speculating wildly here, I'm guessing that they somehow, broke into the phone for them to satisfy the warrant without giving up the password. But this, there's some legal. Anybody want to talk about this?
There's a lot of legal issues involved in this, and it's actually really, really complicated and goes far beyond what the article we posted talked about. In this specific case, it was about somebody who was on parole, as part of their parole agreement, they signed away their rights to basically it allowed warrantless searches of their home. So they signed away those rights, but they were found using a phone which was against their parole, which was supposedly in violation of their parole. And the FBI wanted access to the contents of the phone. And for this particular Android phone, he was using a pattern lock screen. And apparently the pattern lock screen is unbreakable by the current methods that the FBI is using, so they couldn't get in. So they got a search warrant, issued it to Google, a third party, requesting the password, and Google refused, saying that the search warrant was too broad. And apparently the negotiations involved how can Google give the narrowest possible set of information, which is what the FBI wants, without giving away everything else. And part of the reason why this is so broad, or part of the reason why this is such a concern, is you've got the question of where exactly is the data that they wanted stored. Is it on the phone? Is it on Google's cloud somewhere? Is it, somewhere else? And I think that the broader issues that start to come into play when we talk about data being in the cloud is that current federal law about data maintained on a third-party system like this essentially says your data is considered abandoned after 6 months. So the FBI actually has a great opportunity to get data out of the cloud if that's where your data is stored. And a lot of people seem to be ignoring this fact right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over time. Craig, you have any thoughts on this? Since I know just how much you feel about this sort of
The moral of the story is don't put something on your phone or in the cloud that you don't want the police to be able to get their hands on.
Well, but Craig, couldn't I say the same thing about having something in my house that I don't want the police to get their hands on?
Probably a good idea. That's right.
Or storing something, in my pockets that I don't want the police to get their hands on?
That's probably a good idea too.
But
That's
doesn't that seem to, I don't know, violate the Fourth Amendment? Just,
Well, we're in a big police state, big government, big police state environment now where that's the way things are. I mean, think about it. I can't go into the airline, go into the airplane with a 2-inch pocket knife, 2-inch blade pocket knife. I mean, it's gotten absolutely ridiculous. But the populace puts up with it and supports it, and so this is where we're headed. We're, in big police state.
Anthony, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, in general, I would agree. If you're not breaking the law, you can't get in trouble for not breaking the law.
Well, the argument is this, Anthony. The argument is
same...
this. If they have a warrant to search your car, they're not allowed to go into your house, right? If the warrant says you may search the person's vehicle to find a dead body or whatever, or drugs or whatever it is, you can't go into someone's house. What Google's saying is by giving the authorities a password, that's beyond the scope of the search warrant because that password could be used for Facebook, for Twitter, for all sorts of things. That's the argument. So there is a narrowness to a scope, and we got to move. But there is a narrow scope to a search warrant, and I think it's a fascinating issue.
But to answer the question, I would say try not to break the law, but at the same time, I would like these warrants to be as narrow as possible. I want my rights.
Indeed. Okay, so next up, this I saw this and then I shared Alan's post because I knew way about Bing. Bing it on. I think it was a great publicity thing. Bing is a nice search engine. It gives. I'm in the Google ecosystem, right? So we've been using that word a lot about Amazon and different things, but I like Google products, right? I don't make any money from Google. They don't pay me a dime. I do this voluntarily. All of us do. It's a money and time sucking hole, and we love it.
And buy an Nexus 7.
Buy an Nexus 7.
They should pay you, Dan. They certainly should pay you.
I'll be happy.
Anyway,
so yeah, let's talk about this. Bing it on. Tell us what it was, Alan, and what you think about it.
Basically, Microsoft has, for starters, for people who don't know what Bing is, and I'm sure there are quite a few of you, Bing is Microsoft's search engine. It's their direct competitor to Google Search. Microsoft, in case you've forgotten who they are, they used to create an operating system, also an Office suite. What their research has come up with is they did kind of like a Pepsi challenge thing. They went to 1,000 people, is what their survey size was, and showed them search results from Bing and showed them search results from Google, and apparently in approximately 2 to 1, people preferred the Bing search results to the Google search results. And if I remember correctly, there was also a fairly sizable number of people that actually said something like, well, they seem about the same. So they've started this ad campaign, and it's apparently going to be a fairly big ad campaign, where the Bing It On website at bingiton.com will let you search for something. It then shows the results from Bing and the results from Google search. These are regular plain results, not the ad stuff, not knowledge graph stuff, sort of, not search plus your world stuff, none of the Bing social stuff as well. Just plain search results, and let you pick which set you like better. And in a very informal survey that I've done so far, I don't know where Bing gets their numbers, because everyone I've seen so far says they've had pretty overwhelming results in favor of Google, not Bing.
I have to tell you, I tried to use the website, and I didn't realize that they were flipping the Google and Bing results randomly, and I tried to concede a vote to Bing, a pity vote, concede, and I still ended up with a um, for for Google and one draw. So
Well, they
like
don't
you
have
say,
search
Aaron,
plus
I
your
have no
world
idea
in
where
there.
these
So
numbers are coming from.
Right. I mean, when I
the
first
deck
saw
will be
these numbers,
stacked, right, Alan? If you're used to search plus your world and you like those targeted results for you personally, those are lacking. So I'm guessing their sample was a bunch of people who are not in used to benefiting from the Google ecosystem, right?
right? But here's the thing: even people who are used to benefiting from the Google ecosystem, when they used BingItOn.com,
Okay.
Like
tended
me.
to tended to be picking the Google one more, which didn't have these search plus your
Dan,
world
I'm gonna
results.
Dan, I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm gonna solve this problem. I'm gonna definitively show you that Bing is better. And this is a search that I have done a couple of times, and I've reported the poor search results to Google, and they have not fixed it. I just did this search on Bing and On. I searched Frederick Week, which is the name of one of my shows, and you see the #1 hits on the Bing side are all relevant. They're all the shows. They're all what I was searching for.
Okay.
And on the Google side, what they do is they automatically split the words Frederick Week and make it into two separate words. And so the search results are totally wrong.
It's actually funny you say. It's actually funny you use that example, Craig, because my favorite example from BingItOn.com is when I did a search for Bing It On, and at that point, Google's results were almost completely talking about Bing It On, and Bing's results were almost always talking about a movie called Bring It On. So in
Gotcha.
that one case, Google had far better results, far more timely results, far more accurate results than Bing, which
Great.
I found very surprising.
All right, as we move on, great comment from Kevin.
Yeah.
Another
hang on,
point:
Bing.
try using Bing in a different language, or run away screaming. That's one of the things. When Vic and Dotra was on, he pointed out that they were very proud that Google Plus launched in so many different languages, and we see so many folks from different countries, that are using Google Plus actively, and they'll engage in their own language and in English. So I guess that's one thing that separates the two. But I think competition's good, and in my mind, Alan, the best thing is I'm sick and tired of these stories, these Google bashing, Google haters, writers that will say that they're worried about like the Nexus 7 ad on Google Plus because Google's abusing its monopoly. It's not a monopoly. You can use Bing or other search engines if there are any other, I don't know.
Go.
But
It has a commanding lead
it
in the
does,
search market.
but it's
What
a
do they have,
voluntary commanding
95%?
lead. It's not like there's only one store in a town. I mean, people choose a destination on the web, and they're better. And there's nothing wrong with Google promoting their products on their website any more than Walmart can put a great value product on the shelf. If you chose to make a ketchup and they said we're not interested in selling your ketchup because we don't think it's good or we just don't want to, and we're going to put our great value brand instead, and there's only a Walmart that's the only store in town, you can't, would you sue them and say that they're abusing their monopoly status by not stocking your product? It's their store. They can do whatever the hell they want.
Sounds like a company I know of that starts with an A.
Could you elaborate?
Sounds like an Apple product.
Oh, well. I didn't want to use foul language
Yeah.
during the show. Okay, so Oracle is going to pay $1 million to cover Google's costs and their failed attempt to sue them over Android.
And this is down from what, 3 million, 4 million, something like that?
I don't know. I'm dancing on Oracle's grave, I guess. What do you think, Alan? Any thoughts, and we can move?
No, Oracle's got plenty of problems. I mean, beyond this, they've had so many bugs, so many security bugs in their latest release of Java, it's not even funny. Oracle's dead, or, well, at least in everything besides databases, Oracle is dead.
All right. Well, we've seen a number of Hangout competitors. Hangouts are fantastic. We're using them here, but there are some other folks who have come up with innovative things, maybe better audio, better video, better comment streaming, that sort of thing. So Spreecast is one, and I'm going to use it again, I promise. But it's a neat product. It really is. But Spreecast now has a full screen mode. So that's so if you've used it before and you were frustrated because you couldn't blow up the video, check them out again. And there's some neat stuff there. It's a good product, and I hope Google buys them. There was an interesting story about Wikipedia this week as well, where an author, there was an inaccuracy. The Wikipedia article said, I'm going to pull this up here. Again, all of the articles we're discussing will be in the video description below. So you'll be able to follow along and read the articles before or during, whatever. Philip Roth wrote a book, and Wikipedia, the article said that it was based on somebody, and he said that's not at all what it was based on. It was based on a friend of mine's experience, and he tried to edit it, and they said no, and then the gist of it is they said it has to be a secondary source. So he's like, I'm the author. I wrote the book. I know who did it, and so he posted an open letter to Wikipedia saying that this is ridiculous, that this is inaccurate, and the article or the story is based on this experience my friend had. And then once he posted the open letter to Wikipedia, then they allowed the change to the article using his letter to Wikipedia as the reference. And I guess, what do you think about this?
The comic strip XKCD had a great comment about this, probably about a year or more back at this point, where basically it talks about how citations for Wikipedia evolve, and it's a pretty good one. I will try to remember to post it to my stream later. But basically, this is the problem with Wikipedia, is they don't like in order to maintain their own credibility, they need references. So you can't just say, well, I saw it, because anybody can say, well, I just saw it, I'm just making it up. They need referenced material. And you can kind of see where they're coming from on that, but I think in this particular case, they carried it a bit too far.
Yeah, I think so. And then the final official topic, and then we'll do around the room, what was your most interesting thing you saw on Google Plus this week? Rebel Mouse. I use it. I originate on Google Plus, which it's the hardest question for me to answer. Like when Ted Kennedy famously was asked, "Why are you running for president?" and he stumbled, and they said, that was the famous. It's called The Question. Why are you running for this office? When someone asks me, what is Google Plus? It's a difficult question to answer to me. I love Google Plus. It's a place to make friends. It's a blogging platform. It's got some similarities to Facebook, Twitter, to the old MySpace, etc. It's a social network. But what is it in a nutshell? And that's a hard question to answer because there's so many different things and it's evolving. But I start on Google Plus, and then I send my post to Twitter and then to Facebook. And miraculously, every week I have new people following me on Twitter and adding me on Facebook, just commenting on my stuff that I rarely check there because I live on Google, Google Plus. So Rebel Mouse is another one of those sites where they will take your Twitter stream and your Google Plus stream and your YouTube videos and they'll post them. But now they've changed, and they have added the ability to actually originate a post. It used to be just a sharing thing. You could pipe your post from other places onto Rebel Mouse, and I think it's neat. Competition's good, just like Amazon's up the game with low-end tablets and mid-level tablets. So that's kind of cool. And I don't know if any of you guys are using Rebel Mouse or checked it out, whatever. But this is interesting, and we'll see what they do with it. They've gotten some traction, and they're good at marketing, which is something
Google is
Google's
notoriously bad at.
Not good at. So do you have a? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do a final look at the comments, Alan, and then we'll do a little around the room. What was the most interesting thing that happened to you this week? Sort of thing. But you want to look at comments here?
Yeah, but they're mostly from Kevin, who has self-admittedly said an awful lot this evening. We did have this from David a minute or two ago, which is now not showing up on my screen. There we go. But I guess Bing was trying to correct you, Alan, as in, did you mean bring it on? And yes, I did. But the point that I was making was that Craig was saying that Bing was very good at keeping words together while Google kept breaking it up, and I was giving an illustration of exactly the opposite when it came to the Google and Bing comparison. And we had a pretty good comment from early on, which I will bring in at the end. Why don't you start our wrap-up?
Okay, let's go to Michael first. Michael Banks, Android developer extraordinaire, really good guy, U.S. Army soldier. Thank you for your service again, and keeping us safe. So, what was the most interesting thing you saw on Google Plus this week?
Was able to be in a hangout with Veterans United Home Loans, and it was interesting to see how they use Google Plus and use Google Hangouts using their piece of the pie with like real estate and home loans.
And that's the organization that Sarah Hill has gone to, correct?
Yes.
That was a great deal for them because they got Sarah and her army of followers, and again, none of us would be talking about that organization because I didn't know about it existed. I think it's fantastic. You would have because you're in the service, but that was smart for them. They opened up a new gateway, so good for them. Craig Shipp, what was something really interesting that, as Chris Matthews would say, tell me something I don't know?
Well, you know it, but it has to be you including the comments in the show. I mean, I've been asking for this for I don't know how long, and hopefully now Google will watch this show and they'll get the message that we want to be able to, we being whoever's doing the broadcast of a on-air show, we want to be able to, if we choose, decide to make the comments part of the chat in this case, and or comments from YouTube, may include them in the show if we want to.
We actually had a comment like this from Margie agreeing with you. Craig, you are so right. We who watch the show when we can't participate do love when our comments get read on the air. We appreciate the effort of the host of the show to include us. It makes Hangouts on air worthwhile.
I think it's as much a part of the content as the panel.
Absolutely. And I don't know why I got so much pushback initially when I was suggesting it. Just about everybody I suggested it to me was like, you're crazy. It's back channel. It's private. We want it to stay private.
You were talking about the chat, the internal chat room. I
want both. I want both.
I still think there is I think there should be a private chat and a public,
Yeah, it's not hard. It's not rocket science.
Right. And Craig,
so whoever
like if I wanted to tell, Michael, stop bouncing on your ball or something or whatever, I should be able to do that.
Let me get this out there. It's not rocket science. What you do is whoever starts the Hangout says, okay, by default, the chat is going to be public and the comments on YouTube are all going to come in to the chat and be part of the chat as well. And if you want to post something in the chat privately, you'll have a little checkbox there. You check making it private, but the default is public. And if you don't want to agree to that, then don't come into the Hangout.
Coding nightmare.
Craig.
Not difficult.
Yeah,
Very difficult.
I think it's more difficult than you're making it out to be. Craig, I think what I'm most confused about is this isn't new for this discussion. We've been using Comment Tracker for months now. I've been
talking about this for a year.
Well, we've all been talking about this for a year. Dan's been integrating.
But I've been getting pushback up until now. People are starting to realize that maybe it's something we should do.
I mean, as far as I know, Google's even been listening to it.
I still just got pushed back a few seconds ago.
Anthony Klauser, what was something really interesting that you saw on Google Plus this week, or outside of Google Plus, or whatever? What was?
I hate this time of year. Every 4 years on social networks in general, where the political agenda starts spinning up in you start hitting the Democratic and Republican conventions, and all you see is these political, viewpoints. It's like,
Anthony, I
go
gotta
away.
tell you, I gotta tell you, yours is the first comment this evening on it, and I was really worried that Dan was going to start spinning everything off into a convention story. So I'm glad he didn't.
No, I
So
think
I apologize.
I think it's theater. It's not like the old smoke-filled back rooms of yesteryear where they would pick candidates. I think it's theater, and it's a good opportunity for both sides. I thought both sides did a splendid convention. I thought Governor Romney and President Obama did a fine job with their speeches. I watched all of Romney's. I've watched half of President Obama's, and I'm going to finish it. But it's part of the process. But really, it starts Labor Day. The debates will be key, I think. And 45% feel one way, 45% feel the other way, and the 10% in the middle, that's who all the ads are going to be targeted toward. They're going to spend $1 billion targeting that 10% to try to get them to sway one way or the other. And there'll be stupid stories about crazy stuff that doesn't matter. It's the silly season, so we'll see. Alan Furstenberg, my co-host extraordinaire in
Dan McDermott
in New York. What's the what's a really interesting thing that we haven't talked about yet that you were obsessed with this week?
I was we had I gotta say, talking about the comments briefly, we have a ton of comments. We always do. It's always wonderful fun reading them. It's really difficult for me because usually what will happen is I'll have one selected and all set to go on the screen, and then somebody as part of the show will say something, and I know there's another comment, so I'll switch to that comment. And before I could get it on the air, somebody else will have said something else and commented on something else. So I do apologize every week when I don't get to everyone's comment, but there's an awful lot there, and it's really difficult sometimes to get to all of them. And in particular, I've been trying to go through now. There were at least 2 or 3 that I saw were great, talked about some other really, really good stuff that went on this week, and I can't find them now. So I have to apologize to everybody who follows us quite well in YouTube. It is always great to follow you on the show as the show progresses. The big thing for me this week, that's a good question. I actually haven't spent a lot of time on Google Plus this week, or for the past few weeks. I've been very busy with work. But it's always been refreshing to come in and see what's going on. I think the biggest thing that I found this week is actually Comment Tracker. It's I'm going to give a shout out to Gervin, as usual, for this awesome product. He's done a lot of remarkable things with it. He's constantly improving it. He actually, while the show was going on this evening, we know he's watching. He sent a message to me saying that he very much liked how the comments are popping up on the screen, and hopefully he and I are going to talk and see if we can make that a standard feature of it soon.
That's another company that Google should buy.
I think it's a guy. I don't know if they could buy a person. I think Apple does that, right? They buy slaves.
Google does it in a heartbeat. Absolutely, they would do it. They
All right.
should.
Craig, I've got to disagree with you, though. I think one of the great things about any platform isn't when the company buys everyone who's doing good things in the platform. It's when the company makes the platform such that people outside that company can do great things with it.
Yeah, but I think they should also cherry pick. And when something really great comes along, buy it and include it in the service.
I 100%
like that video
disagree.
service we tested the other day with the super high quality video. I mean, things like that would really make a difference.
I think super high quality video is something that is great as a core service, but I think having a very rich extendable plugin system, which is what Google has done with Hangouts, I think is even better. And I think that's one of the great things about Hangouts.
Also, we have to remember that Google, this is what they're calling a social layer to their whole nexus, right? We're using it to create broadcast shows, which is a niche use. Probably less than 1% of the folks are using it for that purpose.
Right, but to give an example, Dan, there are cases where they need to be able to cater to specific niches. So, for example, the fact that we now have 2 modes for a Hangout. We've got voice mode and audio mode. That's understandable. That's something that an add-on would be very, very difficult to do because it gets deep into the guts of what a Hangout needs to do. But something like displaying lower thirds, controlling who can be a member and who can't, having comments come in and out and being able to get comments from other sources, having these as separate components that work really, really well inside a Hangout. Those are things that I think it's best done by somebody else with very, very good support by Google. And Google, to their great credit, has done a fairly good job.
Indeed, as you always praise them.
I don't always praise them, and you know that well.
Yeah, I'm joking.
I'm one of their harshest critics, but where they do things well, I want to make sure that they keep doing things well. And I think it's things
but don't you agree that they've got quite a war chest, that they should throw some of that money at some of these things that are really worthwhile? For example, this show that Dan does every week, that's a money-sucking hole. There is no justification for Google not at some point in time reaching out to Dan and saying, hey, Dan, can we help you out financially? We know this is a drain on you. Can we help you out?
Let me.
There is no reason on God's green earth that they shouldn't do that, and they shouldn't reach out to other people.
I'm
like
a journalist,
Morris that
Craig.
does the lower third.
No. I'm a journalist. I'm independent,
you could say
just like
no,
Alan.
Dan. You could say no. I'm
Yeah,
fine.
but no.
No, but they should at least reach out.
No, they shouldn't, because I'm a journalist and we offer an objective. We're all fanboys of Google. Even you're an Apple fanboy and you're also a Google fanboy. You love the platform and you use it for your business. But what we provide on this program is independent analysis and our opinions on things. And so if we were on the take from them, that's what in this Oracle lawsuit, the judge wanted to know if anybody was on the take, right?
Trust me, Dan. If they were helping you out with this show, I guarantee that there's no way that all of a sudden I would start saying how great Google Plus is, for example.
But
Craig,
you know what?
You'd
have to wonder
if
I don't want to get into this. We're ending, but we're going to keep the hangout going. But for anyone who wants to participate, but if there would be serious perceptions of whether we're saying things to toe the party line like a PR person would rightly do, who's employed by them, versus independent analysis, which is what we offer.
See, I don't buy that, because I mean, if you started doing that, they could pull back the support. They could say that the show's not the way it is anymore. We're not going to help you out anymore.
No, we're not going to get sponsored by Google.
I'm saying throw money at things that work. Like the lower third app is great. And help people out is all I'm saying.
Well, but here's the thing.
Helping Google. These people are helping Google.
Final thoughts, Alan.
You don't think that Moritz isn't getting support from Google?
I don't know. I hope he is. I certainly hope he is.
Lower third shows up as a featured app.
And even Dan gets support from Google, like when Chi Chu comes on the show.
Right.
And they should do that more often.
Let's not even ignore the fact that Dan gets support on the show by the fact that Hangouts are free. Free!
But Alan, if they want to take on the big guys, okay, all I'm saying is they've got to get serious, and they got to get up off of a little bit of coin and make some things happen. They got to shake things up a little more.
I think they're
so conservative.
I think the place they need to shake things up is by getting the word out.
That's
and
right.
They've done a
piss poor
job of doing that.
This show is doing some of that. They need more of that.
Okay, I want to thank all of you for participating. I want to thank Michael in Augusta, Georgia. You just had 2 new. You're where the Masters is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just had Condi and someone else, right?
Yes.
The other lady.
Yes, the other lady.
The other one. That was awesome. I thought that was, it's 2012.
They had to do it.
And
they had to do it.
Yeah, they had to do it. Gary Levin is here barely, but he's got no video, so that's cool. And Craig Shipp, who has no opinions, but still joins us and
That's right. flouts
his knives and Apple products and gigantic microphone and his relatively small. Oh, we're out of time.
And you saw that, right?
Your American-built knife. That's a knife.
More than half of the knives I reviewed in my last video were made in the United States of America.
Awesome. And then Alan Furstenberg is here, and our Alan is my wonderful, awesome co-host who keeps this thing going as I go pee and stuff. And then Gerwin is our unsung hero with this
Gerwin
wonderful.
is our unsung hero for the night. Yes.
Absolutely, because I've just added this, and this is our his wonderful comment tracker app. It's an app in Google Hangouts, but it's also a standalone website. As you can see the URL there. So we're watching as these comments come in there, and then at certain points I was sticking them on the screen.
Can you tell folks that haven't used it how it works?
All you have to do is on the left side, you simply put them in. You type the URLs in, and it's the fastest way to get the comments live as you go. And
What Comment Tracker will do is you can enter in URLs for Twitter searches. You can enter in URLs for Google Plus comments. You can enter in YouTube URL, and it will collect all of the comments from these various sources and put them in one place so we can follow them and stream them.
It's not just useful for a live show. It's useful if you have a post like if I have a post that gets on the What's Hot list, it gets shared a billion times, and I want to see where what all the comments are without having to click on 50 different places. You can put the original post in, and it will find all of the shares and all the comments and put them in sequential order. So it's really neat. It's very useful.
You don't really have to install it as a Hangout app. Then.
No, right at the top here on the screen, I'm sharing it for folks watching. It's at allmyplus.com, and you can put. Let's say you had a post that had 1,200 or 112 shares, right? And you wanted to get all the comments without having to click to all the different places that the post was shared to. Then you just put that single post there, and then you hover over. And you select, it's changed, the interface has changed a bit, but you select to include reshares, and they'll all be in that second column there. And then in our case, it color codes them.
I would point out one of the advantages to running it inside the Hangout is, aside from the fact that you don't need a second screen, is that the most recent versions will detect whether you're in a Hangout on air and can automatically pick up on the YouTube URL from that. So that's one less step that you need even.
Now, okay, so how do you enable that? You just go into Add App and you add the app.
Understand, it's a standalone website or a Google Hangout app, either way.
Well, and the beautiful thing is in the latest version, it's actually both, because the latest version of the Hangout app has a link that says Standalone Tracker, and if you click on that, it will open up the Standalone Tracker for you.
It's absolute genius. I love Gerwin. I love his work, and this is the most useful app I've seen yet, with the possible exception of the TikTok Tacto.
So now, why do you say that something like this? Why do you say then that something like this should not be purchased and incorporated into the main product?
Because I don't have a problem with Google Plus creating a platform instead of a product, and allowing wild development to go on and encouraging it.
Craig, the biggest reason is because if Google did it, it would be very narrowly tailored. The solution that Gervin has come up with is general, it's broad. As I mentioned, it will access Twitter. Gerwin's open to adding other sources of input. Basically, Gerwin is making a product
Google would screw it
for
up
people.
then, is what you're saying.
Google would aim it just at Google Plus or at Google Moderator or something similar, and not make it the broad, flexible tool. And Dan, can you put it down so they can see me gesturing? I mean, thank you.
Yes, sorry.
I think that this is an illustration of somebody outside Google seeing a need and creating that need, and Google being smart enough and wise enough and capable enough of creating a platform that it will work on. That's what we want Google to be, is a platform for other people to do awesome things with, and not the company that does awesome things themselves necessarily. That's what Android is. It's an enabler for everybody to do awesome things. That's what Google Maps are, and a way to enable people to do awesome things.
But the problem is, Alan, if all of this is too complicated and too hard to use because it's all a little bit every which way, and because you got to be an insider to even learn about Comment Tracker.
And that's a thing that Google needs to do better. And that's a thing that Google can do, is make content discovery an easier method. That's something that Google should be working on.
Like, for example, in our pre-show for one of our shows that I do, Frederick Week, every week I'm spending 10 or 15 minutes in the half-hour pre-show showing people how to do the Hangout lower and how to turn it on, how to get things going. If they didn't have somebody like me showing them, they would have no clue. They wouldn't even know it existed. So that's the problem, where if you have these add-ons and so forth that people work on, that God bless them, that are great, but if Joe Q Public doesn't know it's even there, and furthermore doesn't know how to use it, then what good is it?
Well, and that's what I'm saying Google needs to do better. And this is something that does currently sit in Google's lap. They need to be able to make it so that people can discover these other tools, so that these other tools can be found, can be easily incorporated, so that when I start a Hangout, I know these are great tools that are there.
Yeah.
One way they've done that, the only thing they've given us right now are the featured apps. That's why Lower Thirds is in a featured app, because they know people wanted it. Google didn't make Lower Thirds.
Yeah.
They enabled Moritz to make Lower Thirds, and they enabled it to show up in the featured apps.
They requested Moritz to do it.
They requested a lot of people to do it. Moritz was the one that beat everyone else to the punch.
And he did a good job.
Great job of doing it.
And final thought is, Google has a suite of products. They have something incredibly simple and relatively plain, and it works, google.com. And that funds a bunch of other things. And the other things are varying in degree of simpleness, from a Google interactive Google Doodle, which was awesome today, the Star Trek one, and also some fairly complex features to some folks, but they're engineers. That's what they do. And that's why I think it's a good thing that they focus on creating a platform instead of a product, because it allows innovators to create more ease of use things for folks to use. So anyway, I want to thank all of the participants.
We want to thank you, Dan, for running this every week.
My pleasure. It's fun. And I look back, it was July 22nd. I did my first recorded Hangout. It was fun. And it was wild. I posted that today. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back every Friday. And I'm going to continue the Hangout on YouTube. But we're going to close the official part. But we do this every Friday at roughly 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, as everyone laughs with good reason. But I want to thank you for watching, and I want to wish all of you a very wonderful Google Plus week.